In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we're going to be talking about the rarest of rare, a Chicago Bears win in back-to-back games. We're going to be talking about MLB off-season, hot stove. We'll be talking some Blackhawks and Bulls and more. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You could see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. The season is going on right now, and Christmas is coming right around the corner. So why don't you head on over to icehawks.com, get your family members and loved ones and friends some hat, shirt, jersey, tickets, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, back-to-back games.
Okay, Sean, I want to invite you really quick to something special. Can I do that?
Sure.
Okay, so I want to welcome you to Restaurante a la Bears. Your table is right here. Have a seat. The special today, which we are all eating, is Jared Goff. We are eating him for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
We own that dude.
Should be 2-0 against him, frankly.
Should be. I mean, the Bears in the two games against the Lions, who a lot of people are saying are legitimate Super Bowl contenders, or at least NFC championship contenders. The Bears have outplayed them in the two games at least 6 out of the 8 quarters, arguably 7 of the 8 quarters.
Yeah. And I mean, here's the thing, is today's game, they did not allow themselves to blow it. There were plenty of windows of opportunity where you could have looked at in the fourth quarter even and said, oh no, here we go. They didn't connect on this pass or they didn't make this play, but they kept their foot on it and they did not allow themselves to crumble. They went out determined not to allow what happened last time in Detroit happen against them. They said they wanted revenge. They got it, and they got it big time. And as the game went on, they got more and more pressure on Jared Goff and just swallowed him up. I mean, they did not even let him throw. They were all over him. And you see how this defense is playing. I mean, this is the biggest win of the year. You look at the other wins they have. They have 5 wins now. And look, you look at the first 4. Okay, against Washington Commanders, they're not that great. Then you beat the Raiders with Brian Hoyer. That, you know, you should be trouncing them. And then you had the win against the Vikings last week, where you won barely 12-10. You know, it was a very, very low scoring affair. So here you are. And then of course you beat the Panthers too. You know, you barely beat with your backup quarterback, you Bryce Young, and the worst team in the league. But here you are against a 9-3 team, and you can point out the flaws all you want with the Lions. They're still a 9-win team, and they're poised to win this division. And they have an offense that can score. They went out and smothered them. You didn't let Amon-Ra St. Brown beat you. You didn't let David Montgomery beat you. And you sure as hell didn't let Jared Goff beat you. This has got to be the biggest win of this regime, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is the biggest win. I mean, for a number of reasons. It's the best opponent win. And it's also a division win. It's also the first time you've won back-to-back games, period. So it's a multitude of reasons. It's the best quarterback that you've won against in 2 years.
And the
Nuts.
longest winning streak of the season. 2.
Yeah, so it's and I want to celebrate this. There's things that we still have to deal with, but
Mm-hmm.
um there's I do want to celebrate a lot and talk to the good things here. First and foremost, that defense is playing super well. Super well.
You see what
Um,
happens when you have pressure on the quarterback?
Montez Sweat makes that defensive line so much better. So much better.
Yeah. And he had a sack today.
And he did. And uh he was the reason that you got other sacks. He's a force of nature, and teams have to account for him, and it allows other people the freedom to single coverage or free lanes, etc., because they don't want to give up that pressure to Montez Sweat. And you're seeing the benefit. I know a lot of people were down on the compensation that we gave up for a guy that will be a free agent, and what if we can't re-sign him? This is going to be the nail in the coffin to Ryan Poles. Is the Bears would not have traded for him if they didn't feel they could get a deal done. Fact. And they traded for him, and at the time that they were trading that pick, it was looking like the 34th pick overall.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's going to be probably 40th, 41st. That's a big difference. And you're not going to get the pass rusher that you want at that pick.
Right.
I know we're all gun shy because of the Chase Claypool trade, and I still to this day will argue that the logic behind that trade made
Sure.
sense. It was their professional scouting, didn't work out.
Right. And I mean, here's the thing. I'm going to quote, shout out to Brad Robinson. He's one of my guys on Twitter. And he said so far that the win for Montez Sweat is much bigger than the loss of Chase Claypool. And I think he's right.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it's, again, like you said, the difference is extraordinary. It's huge. What difference? This team could not touch a quarterback to save their lives for the first, 20, 25 games of the Eberflus regime? Couldn't touch them. They were dead last in sacks last year. And now you're seeing that pressure growing. Even when they don't get a sack, there's pressure. And you saw, Jared Goff was kind of going into desperation mode at the end. And you saw that even down 2 scores, they were trying to run the ball because, Detroit is good at running the ball. And, they had some nice runs, did Detroit, even as good as the Bears run defense has been, Detroit's executed pretty well on the run. And they had a few big plays in the fourth quarter. But when you're able to sniff that stuff out and you're down, then you got to put the ball in your quarterback's hands. And, the Bears, they were not playing prevent. They learned their lesson. They were going after him like a predator in their prey.
Yeah. And it's not just one unit. It's the linebackers have been very good.
Tremaine Edmonds had a nice day.
Yeah. TJ Edwards has been great all season long. But the defensive line played pretty well. You saw the defensive backs play pretty well. I believe I heard, let me just double check this before I say it and sound stupid. Jaquan Brisker confirming here, had 17 tackles.
Insane.
17 tackles. That's a good game.
That was definitely one of his better games of the season. Probably, when you have 17 tackles, it's, the only thing, and I'm not mad at him for it or anything. I'm not trying to criticize, is could you imagine if he would have gotten a hand on that ball that could have been an interception?
I was like, oh my God, how did he drop that? I watched the replay slower.
It was more difficult than it looked.
It would have been a real heck of a play to get that. But I mean, it was a nice pass breakup regardless.
Yeah.
But you're just seeing guys play well, and it's not like spectacular plays. It's just overall executing well. So you're not hearing like, oh man, this guy made a great play. It's they're making plays without the penalties.
That was a big thing today too, that I don't think a lot of people are talking about. The Bears were very disciplined today, and Detroit was not.
Oh yeah, and that's in the Eberflus era, that, or at least this season, that has not been the case. You have not seen the Bears have less penalties than their opponent, and the Bears played a really clean game.
They did. I mean, you think about the false starts that you saw in this game and the offsides. I mean, that was mostly all Detroit doing that stuff. And the Bears didn't commit a single pass interference call today, I don't think.
I don't believe so. They didn't really go after Jalen Johnson at all. They didn't really
get a pick though.
They didn't really go after Kyler Gordon. They tried going after Tyreek Stevenson a little bit, and he had a good game. And you saw their top flight wide receiver, Amon-Ra St. Brown. He had big time drops, and he wound up with 21 yards on 3 catches.
Which, as a Bears fan, I love. As a fantasy owner with him on my team, but I'll take. I'd rather have my team win than my fantasy. So I got a couple of leagues. The one league I'm in, and shout out to my friends Andrew Keller and John Rushi, who's been on the show before. They're in my league, loyal listeners, and we do a small league where it's 6 teams and everybody makes the playoffs regardless. So like last year, I had the worst regular season and then ended up going to the Super Bowl. So slow and steady wins the race, right? But, a point being, either way, is Amon-Ra St. Brown is their number 1 target, and he was a non-factor today. He was an absolute non-factor.
Yeah, today in my fantasy league, I lucked out a lot. My tight end is TJ Hawkinson, who is the number 1 tight end in fantasy in my league. And I was like, oh man, is he having a bad day? And I'm like, oh my God, the Vikings aren't doing anything on offense. And I was like, oh good. My opponent has Justin Jefferson. So like it just sort of offsets. But man, I had Lamar Jackson, who had over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. I had Joe Mixon, who had 80 yards and a touchdown. And my opponent had Gardner Minshew. So I think I'm going to win this one, which means I will be the number 1 seed going in and getting a bye first round of the playoffs. ESPN is telling me I have a 77% chance of winning. Now I'll know tonight because my opponent has all the rest of his players in tonight's game.
When you choke away that lead.
So hopefully this is a defensive battle tonight, because I will be crushing it then. Because I still have Tyreek Hill tomorrow. He's been my X factor.
I put a lot of stock into Justin Herbert as my fantasy QB, and boy, has that not looked good.
So this Bears game. So we talked the Bears defense as a whole was a bright spot. They did a great job of bottling everything up. Um, you know, running wise, it was probably their worst effort uh in a while against the run. But
I absolutely. But
um,
Detroit's really good at that.
but honestly, it's the runs from David Montgomery. Most of those were fourth quarter. You take out those fourth quarter runs, and he was contained. And then there was a couple big runs from Gibbs.
Yeah.
It was the big gashes that caused it. But I mean, really, they gave up 130 yards rushing, which is not that bad.
No, it's not that bad, especially considering the fact that you held the quarterback to under 200 yards passing and 2 turnovers.
Yeah,
Well,
and
3 turnovers if you count the fumble.
I think that fumble was on the center, but it's still a fumble.
It's going to
Fumble's a
go
fumble.
down as a fumble on him. I mean, that's just the reality
Yeah.
of it.
Um, but yeah, I mean, especially like under 200 yards, you know, for a quarterback that does not run, that is
No,
that's
no.
great. Um, I want to talk about Justin Fields. Had a pretty darn good game. Um,
There's
you know,
still some of those inconsistent issues though.
yeah, but here uh I want to take an opportunity real quick here is um all right, so where do we go if Justin Fields, he hasn't had that game that just blows us away. There's still some inconsistencies. Okay, I get it. But we also have to take into account that uh the constraints he's in with this offensive coordinator.
Which
But
is valid. It's valid.
but I I, I want to be very cautious because if you are willing to pass on Justin Fields, that means you're probably gonna go use that pick from the Panthers as a quarterback, right?
Yeah, and I don't even want to go there yet. I'm not even going there yet. I just want to make the observations of what I saw because I mean, frankly, what I saw was what he did with his legs today was pretty fucking awesome. And the fact that in 2 straight weeks, he's bent, but he hasn't broken. He's rebounded. I mean, I just think that there were times where he just wasn't very accurate. And there were times where he had the time in the pocket and it was that same thing, wasn't throwing the ball. Now, I'm not saying he had a bad game. Don't get me wrong. I am not saying he had a bad game. There's just still some flaws in there. I
There
mean,
are, there
I
are, but
you know,
I want to take into account again. You're going against one of the better defenses in the NFL, and
are they though?
I
They've
mean
been pretty damn bad recently.
they've had a couple of bad games, but overall they're still one of the better defenses. And
Mm.
you were down how many wide receivers?
Well,
Like
you were down Equanimous St. Brown. You were
they had to call up practice squad guys.
and Valus Jones was active, obviously.
Um, but I just want to say is I know you will not get to this point, but I do want to say that I think it's based on what we've seen, the total package this season. Justin Fields has to be your quarterback next year. And partly because of the numbers he's put up, and you've seen the good things, even with some dog shit play calling. And Luke Getzey at times has shown signs of life, but then he just, he can't be consistent. It'll be like
The
one drive.
scripted first drive is always great.
Yeah. It's after that. He's a bad in-game play caller but my point, that my rambling point is, number one, what historically have the Bears drafted quarterbacks look like? If you could describe it as one word, their
Puke.
history. Okay, puke. All right, so they've already got that against them. I just want to run through the last few years of first round quarterbacks. And obviously this past year doesn't mean anything because they haven't even completed a season yet. But 2022, the only first round quarterback was Kenny Pickett. He hasn't been very good. 2021, Trevor Lawrence has been decent. I not elite by any stretch, but he's been pretty decent. Zach Wilson, bad day to say it because he had a good game today, but he's been atrocious. Mac Jones has been awful. Trey Lance, terrible. Justin Fields, pretty good. And so that's, depending on how you look at Justin Fields, that's either a 60 or an 80% fail rate in that draft class. The year before, Kyler Murray looked like he was going to be good, and then just has sort of failed. Hoskins, terrible. And who else? There was one more quarterback taken that year, but I would say that's a big failure for all of those first round quarterbacks. The year before, Baker Mayfield, Darnold, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Josh Rosen. So that's a 60% failure of first round quarterbacks. 2017, the best of those years because you got Patrick Mahomes, but Watson started off really good, but ever since the whole incident, he's had a whole season of suspension, and he's been bad since. And then Trubisky is bad. 2016, Goff, not good. Wentz, terrible. Lynch, bad. That's a pretty bad fail rate. The year before, Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota were the two first-round quarterbacks. It's 100% fail rate. The year before, Blake Bortles, Johnny Manziel, and Teddy Bridgewater. And Bridgewater has had a long career, but it's been predominantly as a backup. 2013, EJ Manuel was the only first-round quarterback. Fail. The year before that, Andrew Luck, who had a short but pretty good career. Ryan Tannehill has been, a meh quarterback. Brandon Weeden, terrible. RG3 had a couple good years, but then after that stunk. That's a lot of fails. The year before that, Cam Newton was good, but Jake Locker, Blaine Gabbert, and Christian Ponder, overall, that's a pretty high fail rate of first round quarterbacks.
It is.
I mean, what is that? That's probably like a 2/3 or higher fail rate. And I've heard Danny Parkins say that he wants to get a quarterback that is generational, that can make you a Super Bowl contender every year. And that would be great.
We all do.
But in this list, since I went back to 2011, how many of those names are the guy that gets you there? Two, right? Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah. I mean, Jalen Hurts, maybe.
He was second rounder.
Oh, you're just talking first. Okay, fair.
Yeah,
enough.
First rounders. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. That's fair.
Yeah, two in, since 2011 out of a lot of first round quarterbacks. It's not a good odds. We've got a guy who, and honestly, it's the opposing players talk about how good he is. The opposing coaches talk about how good he is. It's our fans and media are the ones that tear down Justin Fields. And I think honestly, you've got to just give him an offensive coordinator that knows how to call plays for him and build around him and build this team up. You add with those two high first rounders, if you go stud defensive end and stud wide receiver, your defense just got even more stout and your offense got better right away. And so I'm pro building up Justin Fields. And since he's come back from that thumb injury, those numbers have been pretty good.
And again, I don't want to sound like I'm tearing down Justin Fields, saying he had a bad game or saying that I'm fully giving up on him. I'm being honest with this in-game assessment. I think there were a lot of good things he did. Don't make that mistake. I mean, that dart to DJ Moore to give them the lead was an absolutely beautiful throw.
And that was all him.
It was all him.
That was not anything that was a scripted play.
That was a free play on 4th and 13.
That was he hard counted that guy off, recognized it, got the snap off before, because a lot of times what happens is when the Bears get the offsides, they blow the play dead, or it's so bad that, the play gets blown up and they just have to take the penalty. But he was able to get the guy to jump and then get the play off, recognize the single coverage, and make that beautiful throw. That was all him. That was not the scripted play. That was not Getsy. That was all Justin Fields and DJ Moore. So yeah. I want to give him a lot of credit for that.
I do too. And some of those runs that he had, whether it was the run for the touchdown or the one early in the game where it looked like it was going to be a safety and then all of a sudden, boom, there's like a 30-yard gain. That was awesome. I mean, that was really awesome.
Yeah. The throw to Darnell Mooney that was just out of the reach of the defender.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
That was a great, really tight window throw where he had to have a weird arm angle to get that out and threw it where the defender couldn't get it. It was either going to be incomplete or a big play.
Yeah. It just, and that was nice because it feels like to me that Mooney and Fields are not on the same page on a number of occasions. And we saw that today. We saw that in the red zone late in the game where it was 3rd down and, they didn't connect and it would have been a 1st down. You could have chewed up some more clock. And again, it didn't end up mattering, but it seems like that they're not always on the same page more often than we would think. Whereas when he's finding DJ Moore, I mean, that right there has been a duo made in heaven that we've dreamed of. So, you got to give him that. I just, there were times when today he just flat wasn't accurate. I mean, that throw late in the game, you know which one I'm talking about downfield that sailed way over.
That one, and then there was the one to Cole Kmet. That Cole Kmet should have caught it, hit him.
Cole Kmet should have caught that.
I don't know if that was a bad throw or if there was miscommunication on if it was going to be an underthrow that where he caught it there, or if it was throwing him, to keep running. That looked like a miscommunication rather than a bad throw, but it's still, it was an incomplete. That should have been a completion. The overthrow, that was a bad one. But I mean, overall, Justin Fields had a great day. It's the runs that get me are the Luke Getsy called runs because they're going to get that guy killed.
There was too much of that today. There was way too much of that.
There was one in the red zone.
You just wasted a down.
yeah, that one. And then there was another one where Justin Fields got hit hard on a quarterback sneak. And I tweeted out at that point, I was like, Luke Getsy should go to jail for that one. Um, it's the design runs, the and the overuse of the design quarterback runs are just terrible. Justin Fields' best runs are when he drops back to pass, sees there's nothing, and then takes the opportunity because he's catching defenders off. Where I would love to get Justin Fields, and you can watch it. He's totally starting to do this and is growing. He just needs more opportunities. Is where he gets into forces that defender to either come up and try to make the tackle on him or stay back and defend the guy catching the ball. And most most quarterbacks, you let them run, they'll pick up 6, 7, 8 yards. Justin Fields, you're like, nah, that guy could run all the way. And it makes you have to think a lot more. And those are the positions I would like to get him in, where he's got DJ Moore or Cole Kmet, and he's forcing that defender to pick who he's going to defend. And you see Justin Fields doing that when he's got that in his mind. And he's trying to, he's trying to, get that in and make that pass before he crosses the line of scrimmage. But I would like to get more of that. But really, Justin Fields' best runs are when the play breaks down or the defenders are out of position, and where it's more organic and not
scripted. Yeah. Well, and like when you're doing design runs on like 2nd and 10, what I don't get is, why are you doing that? And yet when you were 4th and 1, you tried that stupid like pitch or whatever. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh, yeah, that was the 4th down after
Right.
the bad 3rd down call. You had
Right.
Yeah, that was in my notes where there was a 3rd down quarterback sneak that was bad, and then that 4th down pitch. And I starred that right after it happened. I was like, this is going to be an important sequence in this game. And it turned out not to be as important, but in that first half, it was a big momentum shift.
It flipped everything at the end of that half. Flipped everything.
Yeah.
Because you went into halftime down by 3 when you were up 10-0.
If you would have lost that game, that would have been one of the first places that you went back to and looked and went, that's where everything shifted.
Absolutely. And that is 0 on Justin Fields and all on Luke Getsy.
And I want to go back to this. This circles back to another point I wanted to make about one of my biggest things with Matt Eberflus. And the reason I still am in the fire, Matt Eberflus should be fired at the end of the season, is he does not take accountability for things that go wrong. It's never the coaching staff's fault. It's either the defense made a really good play or the offense didn't execute. And that sequence there, he specifically talked about post game, and he said that 4th down was the right call to make because they were outside of field goal range. And he said it was a good call on 4th down. The defense just made a really good play. And I was in my car listening to the post game, and I wanted to scream and yell because how can you just not be like, hey, at no point did he consider making the, taking accountability there. Is you should have punted. Your defense was playing great. You were in no man's land. I agree. You shouldn't have kicked that. You should have squib punted it and given them the long field to work with. They weren't working on it. Don't give them life. That stopping you on fourth down gave them life. You should have punted it, and you had a bad play call in there. That was not a good play call. And
I would have just gone with a better play call, frankly.
I probably would have kicked it there, but if you're going to go for it, you better have a better play call.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I personally, I was fully okay with going with it. It was the play call, and I know it's a completely different situation, but that's exactly what and I think most Bears fans said. You remember that fourth down against the Broncos when they were in field goal range?
Yeah.
And we said, you know what? We don't trust this defense to make a stop, so go for it on fourth down. We were okay with that, but the play call was so bad. And this, to me, even though it wasn't exactly the same situation, it was similar, in my opinion, of I'm okay going with it on fourth down, but don't do something like that. I mean, that was sniffed out immediately. And that's the kind of stuff that drives you crazy about it. It drove us crazy about Matt Nagy. It drives us crazy about Luke Getsy. And even the announcers on TV who try to stay neutral are like, don't get cute with that stuff. And you know what else was really disappointing about that drive in particular is that you were set up to have another nice drive when Justin Fields found wide open Cole Kmet. You remember that?
Yeah.
It's like, that was a great fight, wide open, your tight end, and, you get yards after the catch for a guy who isn't fast at all. And you're thinking, okay, that's a huge, big play. So you waste it. You don't even get points out of it. I mean, if you would have converted on that fourth down, got a few more yards, and you would have kicked a field goal, then okay. Now, obviously, again, this all doesn't mean anything. The Bears ended up winning by a decent margin, but it's that kind of stuff from Luke Getsy that does handcuff Justin Fields in this offense, and it's just not necessary. It's not necessary to have that kind of play call impact games because it's impacted way too many games.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go down I don't think Luke Getsy is stupid. I think he actually can, like, he understands offense, and he would probably be somebody awesome to have as a offensive coordinator for a offensive head coach, where the offensive head coach is the one calling the plays.
Sure.
Where he is helping you design that offense, because I think he does. Like, you could see it when he has those scripted drives. They do well. It's in game when he's having to make calls in game. He just freezes up and doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, you look at what he was in Green Bay. He wasn't the OC in Green Bay, but he was clearly highly thought of when he was there by his peers. I mean, even Aaron Rodgers said it. He thought very highly of Luke Getsy. And I think you're right. I think that if you were to ask someone to break down the sequence of an offensive play or an offensive scheme, Luke Getsy could probably tell you in a very clear and concise manner. But when it comes to just this play calling himself, we see too much of this crap. And, I'll say this, is that the play calling in the second half, for the most part, really didn't have a problem with it. I mean, now, if Justin Fields connects with, I think it was DJ Moore that he overthrew towards the end, right? Was that Mooney or Moore that he overthrew? That was Moore. Okay, so if he would have connected with that throw, I wouldn't even be saying this, but as someone that doesn't like the typical Luke Getsy conservative play calling, that was actually one spot where I'm like, okay, I'm okay with just running the clock out here on the ground. But again, it didn't obviously matter. But, other than that, I felt like the play calling in the second half as a whole wasn't awful.
Other than the opening drive, the first half was bad.
Right. The first half was terrible.
But I do want to stop and say, I dislike Luke Getsy as much as anybody. But this week, he debuted those shoes with the cause for autism for his daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And people are going after him and using it against him. And
Completely unnecessary and uncalled for.
yeah, you can totally, like, if you want to shit all over him, performance for his press conference, cool. Don't go at him after him for, things going on with his daughter. Super
Yes.
uncalled for.
I mean, it was really sad seeing some of the stuff that was being said. And, I try to really emphasize this, is that this Bears coaching staff, I wish no harm on them personally or dislike them on a personal level. There's a difference of the person themselves and the job they do on a football field. I don't like the job they do on a football field, but as people, I'm not going to wish them harm or ill or, make any insensitive comments towards them or their families personally. There's no need for that. They don't deserve that.
Yeah, his young children should be off limits, period.
Yeah. Yes. Correct.
Let's see. I really, really, really like Deontay Foreman as a running back.
I do too. That was a smart pickup by Ryan Poles, and having him back, we saw a difference. He didn't go crazy, but having him as part of that offense is a plus
for the style of running that they've been doing this season. Deontay Foreman is a much better back than Khalil Herbert. And it's not a knock on Khalil Herbert. I just think Deontay Foreman is criminally underrated, and he fits that style much better because he's a big bruising back. And I hope they're able to bring him back next season because I think he would be a huge asset.
I agree. And Khalil Herbert has not looked the same since he came back.
No, he hasn't been getting the same amount of carries, but you're right. I think he's really just got to get back in the rhythm. That's a classic case of he needs a get right game.
And you know what? You have an opportunity over the next few weeks to do that.
And honestly, not to, be like this, but it doesn't really matter because they're not going to sign Khalil Herbert to an extension, I don't think.
No, and I like Khalil Herbert, but look, they didn't sign Dave Montgomery, and I would say Dave Montgomery is a better back than Khalil Herbert.
Yeah, and I like David Montgomery, and it's just the nature of this beast is you spend a few, every other year you pick up a running back in a draft in the mid to late rounds.
Right.
And you that's how you do it. It's, you've got Roshan Johnson, who has shown some burst, and he's gonna be the guy that you count on.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I think when looking at your situation with running backs and you see the improved play from the offensive line, as long as you have depth, then you can be productive in that sector of football. Because look at today. I mean, Justin Fields did most of the rushing. And, he's obviously your quarterback. His first job is to throw the ball, but he can run. We know he can run. But when you have a guy like Foreman out there who just came back, that stuff makes a difference. But, you also credit your offensive line, too, for being able to open up holes and be able to make some of these things happen. It's a collective effort when it comes to the ground game. And, the Bears might not have an in-prime Derrick Henry or a in-prime Dalvin Cook or an Aaron Jones, but it goes to show how effective you can be on the ground as a unit. And that right there just tells you that as long as you're able to execute those kinds of things, you can be a good rushing team. And D'Onta Foreman is a very nice underrated back, but let's be real. He's not Derrick Henry. He's not Aaron Jones, but they do it effectively. And it's really nice to have.
I mean, honestly, I would love for them to bring back D'Onta Foreman on another 1 year, maybe even 2 year deal. You've got Khalil Herbert for 1 more year. So next year is the last year of his deal. Roschon Johnson will be in year 2 of his deal. And so it gives you a year where you don't have to draft anybody as the running back. You've got two veterans and a young veteran at your running back spots. And then the year after, you probably Foreman and Herbert both gone. Roschon is the workhorse back, and then you have to draft a running back that year to be the one that spells him. And that's not a bad place to be. You're setting yourself up, because I think Roschon Johnson is a capable back, and you feel good about a healthy Khalil Herbert, and you really feel good about a healthy D'Onta Foreman. And it's funny because I forget who it was, but you had a couple of Bears beat writers talk about how D'Onta Foreman might not even make this team.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been far and away your best running back all season long.
Yeah.
In a good running game.
Mm-hmm.
Like we talk about, we lost David Montgomery, but the running game has been better this year than last year. And our running game is better than the Detroit running game. So as much as I like David Montgomery and I'm glad he got paid and he's on a team that's doing better than the Bears, we haven't really lost anything.
No, we haven't. We really haven't.
Let's see what else. I wanted to shit on Luke Getsy one more time. He had 2 weeks to prepare for that game, and he didn't target his number one wide receiver, drop, plays for his number one wide receiver to get a catch until the second half. And I know he got a touchdown, and I know he had a couple of runs, but you didn't target him in play routes until the second half. And you had 2 weeks to prepare, and you saw what happened when you started throwing to him. That's when you opened up in the lead. It's mind-boggling that you're like, oh, I got 2 weeks to prepare for, this 9-win team. Let me see, how can we handcuff ourselves while we do this?
Well, you want some good news when it comes to preparation?
It's the first time they won a game after their bye week in like 10 years.
Uh-huh. Can you believe that?
The Bears have been historically bad after the bye week.
Incredibly. Like, most other years, they probably lose this game like 39-14. This is the exact opposite of what the Bears have been post-bye week, especially after you win a division game, you go on a bye week, and then you play the number one division team.
And and another shit on Getsy is I keep making the point that it's not just the play calls with Getsy, it's the personnel. And go watch that game and look how many times a non-wide receiver was split out wide. Kari Blossom game a couple of times was split out wide as the wide out. I saw Deontay Foreman split out as the wideout. Why are you having fullbacks and running backs? I mean, if it's Christian McCaffrey or somebody, okay, but why are you putting your fullback and your running backs uh, in as the wideout? I don't understand what purpose is that creating?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's mind boggling. So these plays they just don't make sense. Um, then you had the sequence. One of the worst sequences of the game is after you got that fumble recovery. Do you remember the sequence right after that for the Bears offense?
I'm trying to remember.
It's you had the missed throw from Fields to Komet, where Komet thought he was throwing, behind him, and uh, Fields threw an over the shoulder throw and it didn't catch. And that would have been a walk-in touchdown.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
And then the next play was um, you had one of those wide receiver screen plays where nobody blocked the cornerback
Mm-hmm.
and got blown up. And then after that was a Justin Fields had the the play broke down and Justin Fields came and ran out and got the touchdown, but that was on Justin Fields. That was not the design play.
Mm-hmm.
So it's frustrating the sequences that you have in there. You know,
Yeah.
um, it's a sign of a bad. I recognize that offensive play callers have plays that they like to do. Even when if you play Madden NFL, there's there's plays that you like. You you feel comfortable with them. You feel like you can do things with them, and you go to the well a lot. But Luke Getsy with that stupid wide receiver screen, it's one thing if you got. It's like you saw it work the first time in the preseason, and you're like, ho ho ho, this is it. And that's the only time it's worked was that first time in the preseason. It's he keeps going to that, and it's super frustrating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely is.
Um, let's see what else. Yeah, the last thing I wanted to talk about is this was on the Flus is that Jahmyr Gibbs touchdown run, the first touchdown is Montez Sweat was not in on that run. You're you're in a goal line, not a goal line, but you're in a red zone situation, and uh, the guy who sets the edge best on anybody on your team is not in, and they bounce a play out and score a touchdown. Had he been in, it's a good chance he stops that, and you wind up, you know, forcing them to kick a field goal. Um, it's just frustrating. Is why is Aiden Hutchinson in like 98% of plays and Montez Sweat is in like 50?
Well, and I know they were talking about like working him into a new system, which to an extent I get, but yeah, it would have been nice to have him out there on that play. But luckily it didn't matter. But I definitely hear what you're saying.
It's if you're going to work him out, be in less downs where you desperately need him, like I don't know, red zone. But um, he's a difference maker. He should be in more.
Yeah, I agree.
Um, the last thing I have to say, the floor is yours after that, is
Mm-hmm.
um, based on the results of games since we last talked, Arizona won a game.
Mm-hmm.
New England won a game.
Huge.
Strength of schedule has straightened back out. As it stands right now, in uh, the remaining 4 games that the Carolina Panthers have, for any chance of them losing the first round pick or the worst record, they would have to go 3-1.
And do you happen to have those opponents in front of you?
I do.
Let's hear them.
So next week is Atlanta, who is vying for a playoff spot. Then would be the Green Bay Packers, who are vying for a playoff spot and playing well. Then you would be going to Jacksonville, who are vying for a playoff spot. Then you would be going back home to play Tampa, who are vying for a playoff spot. So you have four playoff contenders in your last 4 games, and you've got to go 3-1 when you have not won, or you've only won 1 game this season.
Yeah, that's going to be tough for them to do. And do I think they could win another game? Yes. Winning 3, that's going to be pretty tough.
Pretty tough. And that is assuming that the Patriots and the Cardinals don't win any more games. And the Patriots, they still have to play the Jets, and Buffalo's tough. Kansas City's tough. Denver's a possibility, but the Jets are a winnable game. And Arizona has the Bears and Seattle potentially without their quarterback. So, yeah, I mean, even if those teams lose out, you've got, based on the strength of schedule and a two-game cushion, this is looking more and more like the Bears are going to get the number 1 overall pick.
Isn't there a chance to get that number 1 pick like in the 80% or something?
I bet it's higher than that after today.
Yeah, I guess I did look at those odds before because, obviously Carolina lost again today. So I know that they went into the 80s after the Patriots won the other night.
Yeah. Let's see. Da, da, da. Let's see. I'm looking at this article because they make me read it so much before. The Bears now have a 93.2% chance of landing the number 1 pick.
Those are pretty good odds.
93.2.
Those are pretty good odds.
Yeah, I like that. And,
I mean, the swing in confidence over the past week, if you just go back to last Sunday, because didn't the Cardinals won, right?
The Cardinals won, but you had going into last week, the strength of schedule flip-flopped. So the Patriots were only 1 game behind, but the strength of schedule flipped. So it's the team with the lowest strength of schedule gets the benefit, and New England dropped by like 0.001. So it was the smallest of margins, went lower strength of schedule, and they were only 1 game behind. So it's, you're like, oh, okay, that's a realistic, spot with 5 games left. And then the strength of the schedule realigned. So now Carolina has the worst strength of schedule, and then New England won. Um, so you suddenly now have basically 2.5 game lead.
Yeah, that's feels pretty promising at the moment. And really, when you look at the rest of the year, you're looking at two main impact things. You're looking at, are wins going to save the coaching staff? And is there going to be enough for the Bears to say, hey, Justin Fields is our guy? Those are going to be the two things. Because you're going to get that high draft pick, whether it's yours or not. I mean, the Bears have their own draft pick, but you have the Carolina pick, and it's looking really good like that's going to be the number one overall. So I'm not even thinking about wins or losses in terms of draft position this year. When it comes to the Bears themselves, it's all dependent on what the Carolina Panthers do and the other teams that aren't far behind them, what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking the Bears are probably their own pick is going to be around number 10. That's
If you win a few more games here, I mean, it would make sense. Yeah.
um so I'm like last year at this time I was rooting for them to lose so they could get that number one pick because it
Well,
does
we
it,
all were.
yeah it if you already went through a shitty season, you might as well reap some rewards. And the the Bears the Bears got a lot from getting that number one pick. They got
I mean, think about it. You're getting DJ Moore and you're about to get the first overall pick in this year's draft.
and you got a starting right tackle for the next 15 years. Um so you've you got a lot. Uh and don't you also get a second in there somewhere? Like next year?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's funny because you go back and forth on the value of that first overall pick, and you compare that to the value of DJ Moore. And DJ Moore was, I thought, the minute you got DJ Moore, I'm like, wow, that is a great pickup. It's looking even better of a pickup than we initially thought.
Yeah. Um so the Bears get not this upcoming draft, the next year's draft, they get Carolina's second rounder too.
I mean, this trade is looking like one of the all-time fleeces that the Bears have ever pulled off.
Yeah, so you ended up getting the number 9 pick last year, DJ Moore, the number 61 overall pick last year, most likely the number 1 overall pick this year, and the following year's second round pick. And honestly, the Panthers are not going to be very good the year after either. So it's probably going to be a pretty good second rounder.
Yeah, that team's a mess.
But all in all, essentially, if you want to break it down, for delaying your number 1 overall pick by a year, you got the same pick, the number 1 overall. You delayed it by a year. You got Darnell Wright, DJ Moore, Tyreek Stevenson, and a second rounder from in the future draft for delaying your number 1 overall pick by a year.
Not bad.
But yeah, so I don't care but now because you've got that number 1 overall pick almost locked up, and there's really nothing you can do to control that at this point.
No.
Is you beat Carolina when you played them.
And the Cardinals have won a few games and you play them, so they've given themselves a cushion.
Yeah. So there's nothing else you can do. So you want to see improvement on this team. You want to see that defense keep playing well. You want to see Justin Fields grow. And you don't care about late season wins. but the question you have to ask yourself at the end of the year is this a quarterback we can win with? And is he better than what the option that we would get in the draft? And two, is this coaching staff, because you got to look, you have 5 wins right now. It's not a good record. Is this a bad roster and your coaching staff is doing everything they can to keep you in games? Or is this a good roster and the coaching staff is not putting you in position to win?
I mean, I'm not going to say it's a good roster, but I think there's talent on this team. And I do think with an experienced coaching staff, I think you could have 7 wins right now. I mean, look at those 2 historic losses against the Lions in Detroit and against the Broncos. Those should have been wins. That would be 7 wins right there. And hell, you look at some of the other losses you had. Who knows what would have happened if you were a lot more well prepared against Green Bay in week 1? Or if you came out and you looked better against the Chargers, who are just kind of meh. I mean, you got your ass kicked by the Chiefs. Yeah.
That was an ass kicking, period.
Yeah. I mean, you're getting your ass kicked by somebody who might go down as the greatest quarterback ever. So,
but honestly, I don't think this roster is nearly as bad as we thought. We have a legit number 1 guy at wide receiver. Other than center, early in the season, that line was a disaster because of injuries and et cetera, and guys being out of position. But as of now, other than center, not so bad. You've got your defense is showing to be one of the better ones. I mean, I still think you need another edge rusher. And if they're able to pick up, like a Jared Verse, the edge rusher from Florida State, that suddenly maybe that's a pretty darn good defense. You've got a quarterback that a lot of people players and coaches in the league think is a legitimate player. And you've got a running back rotation that, there's no superstars in there, but there's a bunch of decent players that, hey, this is a roster you should be able to make the I think this is a roster that's better than some of the bottom playoff rotation, or this playoff type teams. I think this is better than the Steelers roster and their better record. They have a better coaching staff.
Yeah, you got Mike Tomlin. And Mitch Trubisky is now. Thank you, Mitch, for helping us out, buddy.
Mitch looks so bad.
Yeah. Ooh. I even tweeted, I'm like, we went to the playoffs twice with this guy.
He just, Mitch was being Mitch. He was out. You had that was a bad quarterback matchup with Bailey Zappi and Mitch Trubisky
on Thursday Night Football. But hey, Thursday Night Football also had Tyson Bagent versus Bryce Young and the 1-win Panthers.
But quickly looking at the draft and the way it's sort of shaping up is, all right, let's just assume the Bears get the number 1 pick and that they finish, I'm going to say 10 with picks 1 and 10. Honestly, you can't draft at that number 1 spot. If you decide, unless you are going to draft a quarterback, you can't take that pick at number 1. I don't think.
So the most likely teams drafting after that would be the Patriots and then the Cardinals. Are the Cardinals going to draft a quarterback? They got Kyler Murray. What if you really want Marvin Harrison Jr.?
I mean, the Cardinals are a wild card. I mean, the Cardinals are going to have another decent pick too because they have um, Texans number one, but the the Cardinals are going to be an interesting one because I, I mean, what has Kyler Murray done since he came back from injury? Not much.
Well, and I understand that, but you have a big commitment to him.
Yeah, but if you don't feel he's the guy, you can move on. I mean, we're starting to see that teams are not feeling, you know, married to bad player. They take that dead cap hit and move on. Especially if you're a bad team, you're not overpaying a bunch of players. Like it's one thing if you're a good team and you're saddled with that. But if you're a bad team that doesn't have, a ton of big name players, you can sort of afford it. That's what the Bears did. They were like, "Oh, we're bad. Let's get out from under this debt and build for the future." I think they could do it. I mean, it would suck for a year or two, but yeah, probably a year, but is what it is. It's going to be interesting to see. Are they going to stay married to him, or are they gonna try to use this opportunity to get themselves the quarterback of the future? Um, but I mean, honestly, if you're not drafting a quarterback number one overall, I I think it's stupid to to draft number one because you can really set yourself up for the future by the capital gain from moving back. Even if you don't move all the way back to 9 and you don't get that full, haul like they got from the Panthers, if in theory, Caleb Williams should be uh a more desirable number one pick than Bryce Young. Is that fair?
Yeah. I mean,
If Bryce
I get what you're saying.
if Bryce Young was 6'4", 230, I would say no, but his size really made people question. And Caleb Williams comes in more NFL ready, and I would say he's much more desirable. And so you're going to have more teams trying to get that pick. But I think just the future number ones or players that you can bring back, they're going to set yourself up. You're going to be able to get a good player if you step back a few spots. I think it's silly if you're not going to draft a quarterback staying number one. I love Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he's really good, but Malik Neighbors from LSU is also a damn good wide receiver. Um, uh, the guy from Washington, Dunze, he's really good too. So you've got some uh, good wide receivers there. Jared Verse though is, you know, if you were to drop back towards the 8-9 pick, Jared Verse, the edge rusher out of Florida State, would be huge. Um, you know, I just I'm just I think the value is too high if you decide Justin Fields is the dude that you can't draft number one. The pressure is really high on getting that right. If you trade back and you get multiple picks, that gives you flexibility and, more bites at the apple and early bites at the apple.
I get what you're saying. I do.
And I love Marvin Harrison Jr. I just I just would not. I would rather have 3 number 1 picks and then Marvin Harrison Jr.
That's fair. That's
Um,
fair.
and the other thing I think about the draft is we'll talk more as we get closer, but you know, 2 of the really highly rated players as of now are the offensive tackles from Notre Dame and Penn State, uh, Fashanu and Alt. And I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, the Bears should pick one of those." I don't know if I agree. Is I think Braxton Jones has been good enough that picking picking a top 5 pick with an offensive tackle seems like a luxury. To upgrade over Braxton Jones with one of these guys, is that warrant? Because then that means Braxton Jones is going to be a swing tackle. Um, so you essentially replace the spot that wasn't a glaring hole where you do have, I think you just get better value. It would be like drafting if you sign Jalen Johnson and still draft a cornerback when you've got, 4 cornerbacks on your roster that are good. You're like, well, Kool-Aid McKinstry is really good. Yeah, he is really good. It's just not a hole for you. And I think, best player available is great, except if you've got to be picking in a spot that you actually have a need. Like if best player available is quarterback and you're the Chiefs, you're not picking a quarterback because you've got one. Um, you know, the way this is shaping up is if you feel like Justin Fields is your guy, it's shaping up that the first couple picks are going to be quarterback and then offensive tackle. There's a tight end that's going to be high up there. Um, and then it's, towards number 10 is when you've got the edge rushers and uh um other wide receivers that are going to be picked. So I think if the Bears, this is like a prime thing for if you decide Justin Fields is your dude to move down and not lose out on, this year you felt like you lost out a little bit. You love the guy you got, but you feel like you lost out a bit because guys got picked before you. In this draft, I think the guys that you want most likely are the ones that are going to fall to around number 10. So you could get pick of the litter of players that you actually want.
And that's fair.
Uh, but I mean, really, I guess the last thing to say about the Bears is, next game is next Sunday against Cleveland, and that's a team that's led by Joe Flacco.
Yeah, go out and do it again. Is that game at home or is that on the road?
It's in Cleveland.
It's in Cleveland. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had what, 3 out of 4 road games over this stretch?
Yeah. No, the last 4 games. Next week is on the road, and the last game is on the road. But Arizona and Atlanta are here.
Well, no. What I'm saying is, you were in Detroit, you were in Minnesota, then you're at home, and then you're going back on the road again.
Gotcha.
So, there was one comment I wanted to make today about today's game. Were you paying attention on TV at all to the crowd at Soldier Field?
There was a lot of Lions fans, it looked like.
Yeah, I have never seen that many visiting fans at Soldier Field. And maybe there was, I remember last year there were a lot of Philly fans at Soldier Field, but boy, there was a lot of Honolulu Blue. And I had a friend who was at the game and I was like, yo, man, it looks like there's a lot of Lions fans there. And he's like, yeah, honestly, down this lower bowl area, it's like 40, 60 Lions fans. Like there were a lot of sections where there were seemingly more Lions fans than Bears fans. I don't know what the whole ratio was around the whole stadium, but my goodness, there was a ton of blue there.
I mean, the weather and the expectation that the Bears were going to lose probably, probably, had Bears fans like, yeah, I don't want to go to this game. It's cold and shitty and they're going to lose and probably just flip their tickets. I could see that. Um, but they missed out on a great game.
Well, and Lions fans have traveled all year. I mean, they traveled well to Lambeau Field. There was a ton of blue at Lambeau Field. There was a lot of blue at Arrowhead Stadium. Last year, they were talking about how much blue there was in freaking New Orleans. So they've been traveling well all year. And obviously, when the Lions come to town, typically, yeah, there's always some pockets. You see some Honolulu blue and silver spread out, but it's, sprinkles here or there. Detroit's not far away, but this year, it was more than just some sprinkles. I mean, there were sections that looked completely filled with Lions fans. And, I'm obviously not talking bad about them or saying anything was wrong. I'm just saying it was like, wow, it was very noticeable, the visiting. Because, I mean, in Chicago, you're not Los Angeles, like the Chargers, especially, where every game's basically a road game for them. Or if you even go down to like Jacksonville, a lot of visiting fans go down to Jacksonville. We're used to seeing Bears fans fill up other stadiums. This was an instance where our stadium was getting filled up by the other team. And it's, we're used to seeing a lot of Packer fans here when they play Green Bay. We're used to even a decent number of Vikings fans come down, but with the Lions have always had a big fan base, but they're traveling particularly well this year. And boy, I mean, they really made themselves notice. I mean, when they took the lead, just based on TV, it sounded like we were at Ford Field. I just thought that was wild.
Yeah. It'll be nice when we finally have a dome. And I think it's a lot harder to have that happen because I think when their Bears are not playing well and the weather is bad, I think just the tendency is people will give up their seats more likely. But if there's the dome, I think people will still go. So like, hey, it's going to be 75 in here. I don't give a shit. I'm still going to go even if they're going to lose. Um, you know, and the Bears new stadium in the South Lot, huh? Huh?
Jeez.
Uh, the whole stadium situation has been a disaster.
Yeah, and it doesn't look like it's getting resolved anytime soon.
No, I mean the good thing is we're playing at Soldier Field for another like 6 years anyway after this year. So and it's gonna take like 3, maybe 4 to build a new stadium. So we've got like 2 years to lock up, where it's gonna be. So it's not like they're in a hurry.
Right, right. It's just you want to have this figured out.
You do, yeah, absolutely. And the longer it takes is the more embarrassing it is, but uh it's it's not like it's a rush. Um, I don't know about you, but I kind of want to talk about baseball.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
What a circus. What a circus the whole winter meetings was with the
yeah,
reporting. What a circus. And you know what? I'm going to give credit to Bob Nightingale for calling it out and admitting it. That was not a good look for MLB reporting.
yeah, the Morosi thing about the plane, that was a big swing and a miss. Um, and this whole, the whole coverage of the Ohtani situation was super bad. Like I know that they wanted secrecy, but man, it really was bad reporting. I'd rather hear nothing than guesses and lies and what we got.
Well, and you heard about the report Bob Nightingale made about the Cubs potentially involving Christopher Morel in a trade,
Uh-huh.
and Jed Hoyer not happy about that.
No. And confronted him.
Yeah, he confronted him, And then here you are in the midst of all these rumors, and the fact that your own president of baseball operations is chewing out a guy, it's like yeesh. They're clearly not happy with this kind of reporting, and I think it was a big wake up call.
Yeah. But in the end, Ohtani went the place that I think we all thought he was going to go anyway. Just for a lot more money than we were expecting.
Let's be real. Based on what we heard and what we understand about how teams operate, Ohtani wanted to be a Dodger. They were going to make it work to be a Dodger. He wasn't coming to the Cubs. We hoped, we prayed, it wasn't going to happen. I'm not here to give up on the offseason on something that just was not going to happen. With all that being said, it's go time. You got to be serious now.
Yeah. I mean,
because I'm concerned, but I'm not giving up on anything.
I agree with you 100%. Is Ohtani was, even if you were one of the finalists, you were on the outskirts. And I think Ohtani wanted to be a Dodger. He liked Toronto. I think Toronto's the one that drove that price up a lot.
It was a leverage ploy.
And I don't know if it was a leverage ploy per se. I think he really would have gone to the Blue Jays, but I think he gave the opportunity to go, like he took that final offer from Blue Jays that he liked, brought it back to the Dodgers, and the Dodgers bumped it up and sweetened the pot and made him happy. But I think the Cubs at the end of the day were, they, even if they were in it, they weren't in it. And now that they've sort of, the door's been closed on Ohtani, there is a slim margin for them to walk away from this offseason better than they were last season. And they've got to do things right to make it work.
This will involve trades and signing guys.
It will involve trade and signing guys. I think your free agent focus has to be Bellinger. I don't know if you agree or not. I think that's the case.
I'd like him back, but boy, he's going to get paid.
He's going to get paid. But I think the market, the good thing is, I think the Dodgers, Gary was telling me that he thinks he'll go back to the Dodgers. And I know the Dodgers there's talks that they still have room to play with, but I don't see that marriage happening again.
I think they're going to go after Yamamoto before they go after Bellinger. The team I'm worried about Bellinger is the Giants.
I think the Giants are in, but the Yankees are out.
I just got Juan Soto, so
yeah. So I think that the number of teams that have the budget and the need for Bellinger have significantly shrunk, which is good for the Cubs. And the fact that he played for the Cubs last year, liked it there, loved the fans, loved his experience. I think he gets the benefit of the doubt. So as long as the money's in the right ballpark, obviously if the Giants come out with some astronomical contract, and blows him away. But I think if the money and the years, all things considered, are close, I would think he would choose the Cubs over the Giants. It's just, you got to make that work. Third base.
There's smoke around Matt Chapman, which the bat decline is making me a little nervous.
The bat decline is nervous. That glove is good. Can you imagine that infield with Chapman, Swanson, Horner is your infield, you're going to save a lot of runs.
Oh yeah, no kidding. Absolutely. I mean, that would be a hell of a defensive field right there. It's just you when you have a third baseman, you need run production.
I agree. That should be a position of pop. There's just I mean, who's the market there? Like what you need to do better than Patrick Wisdom.
I think they're pretty high on Chris Morel, but he's got a lot of work to do defensively.
Okay, so let's say that if your plan is to pull a Nick Madrigal and convince or get him to be a better third baseman. Okay, I'm okay with that. Chris Morel at third. Then who's your DH?
I don't know.
So you need a bat, and between you need a first baseman, a third baseman, and a DH. And right now you've got Morel.
Matt Mervis.
I don't know. I don't think you can go into the season counting on Matt Mervis.
Well, I mean, I think that if you go after Rhys Hoskins to be your first baseman, if you were to get Matt Chapman as well, then Christopher Morel comes into play.
You know, I think plan A would be still trying to make that Pete Alonso trade happen.
And I don't think it's going to happen.
I don't think
really
so.
don't.
I don't think so either. And so I think Rhys Hoskins is probably, and Rhys Hoskins, you know, the K rate's pretty high, but that guy's got some power on him.
He does. Yes, he does.
So that would take care of first. And then if you could bring Bellinger back, he could rotate between DH, first base, and center field. I mean, I guess he could play any of the three outfield spots, first base or DH. That just leaves third base, and that if sure Morel's going to play some there, but it would be nice to have another guy. You know, Max Muncy wouldn't have been an option, but he re-signed. There's not a, I mean, without trading, there's not a lot of options there. I would rather than Chapman, I would rather make the trade with the White Sox and get their third baseman.
Yoan Moncada?
Yeah.
No.
I think in a better clubhouse, with better bats surrounding him, I think you could see some
damaged goods.
It's possible.
Bad back. He's a hell of a third baseman, but that bat has just not been there like we thought it would be for a while.
If the White Sox could eat some of that contract, he's going to make less than Matt Chapman. And I think you'd get better offensive production out of him.
You're also giving up a lot of capital that isn't money for a wild card.
It's going to depend. If you're eating a lot of that contract, and we'll get to that to the White Sox, I think if you paid all of that contract, you could give him a player to be named later almost and get him.
I mean, if they're that desperate to get rid of him, maybe.
Well, I think Jerry Reinsdorf just doesn't want to pay anybody. And if he could get that contract off the books, I think that would be Getz's marching orders, is make it happen. I think it would be a salary dump. I think the White Sox would jump at that.
I mean, it's possible. It's definitely possible. I mean, they've clearly made it very clear that they're not afraid to get rid of any of that old core. I mean, you already got rid of Tim Anderson. You know, he's gone. You're probably going to trade Dylan Cease if you're the White Sox. So if they're trying to flip everything, my question is, I mean, every move they've made signals rebuild, but you hear Chris Getz and you're hearing conflicting things from what Chris Getz is saying and what they're doing. It's like, are they trying to like contend while rebuild? I don't know.
I I think we'll get there in a minute. I just want to finish up the Cubs, but I've got a lot of thoughts about that. But back to the Cubs. I think you really have to focus your attention on Bellinger and Rhys Hoskins. Third base maybe ends up being a trade. Maybe a Chapman, maybe it's a Morel retooling on his defense. A Bieber or Glasnow trade, I think would be big. And I'm going to throw a name out there where he's older now, but I think as a bench bat and a utility position player, I think you could really do good things with him. The flirting finally ends. Whit Merrifield.
I don't love it. I don't hate it. I just my one problem is I feel like he's going in the other direction.
Yeah, but you're not relying on him for anything. He is
No,
he plays the poor man's Ben Zobrist role.
he does.
He's gonna be that super utility guy, that bat that comes in, that he's an annoying at bat for the other team. Even if he's not the same guy and he's older, I think having a guy like that is would be big. That veteran experience, and that I think that would be huge for your new manager to have that weapon. Like I don't he's not just that clutch bat that's not going to strike out a lot, and the ability to play multiple positions on the infield or outfield. I think is a big get. Allows you to do a lot of things with off the bench or subbing in, spot starts if need be. I think that would be a good. I don't think anybody's paying him to be a starter unless it's a scrub team that's, that doesn't want to pay anybody. But I think for the Cubs and the opportunity to play for a team that could be a contender, I think that could be a marriage.
You know who I like? And I think you've made some good points. The one I like that's been rumored about acquisition in like a trade is I really like Josh Naylor from the Cleveland Guardians. We've heard his name getting tossed around there.
Are they looking to trade him?
I mean, he's been rumored in packages with Bieber. If you were to make a big deal,
Maybe. And another name I'm going to throw out there. I haven't heard any rumors about this, but it's a council guy, and it fits what the Cubs have been trying to do under Jed. Is you take a flyer on Brandon Woodruff.
oh, I think a lot of people would like that.
I think that fits. He's injured, so you're paying him on the hopes he comes back. But he's played for Council, and that's the type of move that the Cubs have done several times under Jed. I think that's a legit possibility.
Yeah, I think so too. I really do. I mean, I think his name's came up involving the Cubs as soon as he was cut.
Um, I don't. I mean, the good thing is I don't hate their rotation as it stands on what date of today, the 10th, early December. Um, is Steele, Tyone, Assad, Wicks, Hendricks. I don't hate that rotation.
I don't hate it, but if you're going to make a legit run, you got to improve.
Yeah, I think Yamamoto is going to the Mets.
Could very well be. I mean, Yamamoto's asking for 300 plus million for a guy who's never pitched in the majors before.
Yeah, and the Mets have that kind of money and that kind of a crazy owner. And apparently Yamamoto and Kodai Senga are like really good friends. And Senga has been recruiting him. So it it seems like that's the way that's gonna go. But if you could get a Glass or a Bieber um to add to that rotation, I uh I think that makes it that much better.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Um, but yeah, you've got a lot of work to do if you're the Cubs. You've got to work that. And I luckily Bellinger was going to be one of the later signings anyway because he's a Boris agent.
Right. They're gonna wait it out.
Um, so you got the opportunity to to fill those other holes, but you're going to have to work. You're going to have to get that done. I think there's a lot of smoke and fire where the Reese Hoskins things is. Um, and it makes a lot of sense. So I think that happens, but then it's just you got to solve that third base and then add another pitcher and some bullpen arms.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of work to do, and they haven't really done anything yet, but
Yeah.
there's plenty of off season left.
Oh yeah, there's a ton. I mean, not a lot of teams have done anything.
No, I mean, we were waiting out on the Ohtani stuff.
Yeah. But to flip to the White Sox and to finish kind of the question you had is I think the White Sox are trying to put together a team that isn't tanking, but is rebuilding, but doesn't look like a rebuild. Like they're like, oh, look, we're actively adding players. We're making trades. We're making moves. But in the end, what is this roster really going to look like? I mean, like, all right, you got Max Stassi, so you got a absolutely dreadful bad. He's a
Good framer, good defender, but yeah,
yeah.
can't hit.
I mean, I mean, last year was okay, but the year before he was a stellar defender. So I don't hate that move. Like I don't hate that move at all. He's a little old, but I don't hate that move. Um, you brought Cousins in on that minor league contract, and it's a low cost with some decent upside, potential upside. Um, uh, you got a guy from the Red Sox in the Rule 5 draft. Um, you've got uh the guy from the Korean Baseball League.
Oh, Eric Fetty,
Yeah, Fetty, you signed him for, you know,
Fede,
two,
Fetty, whatever it is,
I think
former
it's,
national,
I
2 year
think it's
deal.
Fetty. Yeah, 2-year deal, but that one, the way that money is structured is it's structured where a lot of it's going to be deferred until next year, which makes me think that he's a guy that they're hoping to flip.
Yeah, could very well be.
I mean, based on the way they structured that, it's not like they're hurting for money or anything. So, if they plan to keep him, you're like, well, why wouldn't you front load that? So, you have gives you more wiggle room next year. I think they're planning to flip him, and so then the other team has to take more of that financial responsibility. Um, so they've made some moves, but they're not stellar moves.
Their bodies.
Their bodies, and ultimately, your your right now, like these are the names that you have to choose from for your starting rotation. And this is assuming that Dylan Cease is still there. And I think Dylan Cease is going to get traded to the Dodgers.
Yeah, it's going to be the Dodgers, it's going to be the Braves, or it could be like the Orioles.
I think it's going to be the Dodgers because they're going to dump some of those prospects and they're going to put the best team they can around Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, and Shohei Ohtani.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't cost that much for the next like 2 years, except prospects, which you have. So I think that makes a whole lot of sense for the Dodgers. But I
I
don't
don't
think
think the Dodgers give a shit about their prospect pool right now.
no. Um, so I don't think Dylan Cease will be there, but for for the sake of where we're at, your pool right now is Dylan Cease, Eric Fedde, Michael Kopech, Soroka, Jared Schuster, Jesse Schultens, and Tuki Toussaint.
Mm.
That's your pool. And you take Dylan Cease out of that. Michael Kopech is your opening day starter then.
Sure, it's not Tuki Toussaint.
Like you know, honestly, is everything that's happening screams Jerry Reinsdorf is trying to make more money.
You saw the whole thing about him meeting with the Nashville higher ups, right?
Yeah, and there's no chance that they're moving to Nashville.
No, I don't think so either. I think it's all for more leverage. I
He,
just don't see them moving.
he's trying to create leverage because it's time to start talking about renegotiating a deal for a new stadium. And honestly, is the climate has changed a whole lot since the time that Guaranteed Rate Stadium was built. And nobody is giving him that sweetheart deal. It's just not going to happen.
No, so he's going to try to get his sweetheart of one as he can.
And it's just, he's not going to get it. He's not going to be happy. And he's not moving.
Well, what if David Eckstein tells him to move?
I mean, can you imagine how big of a black eye that would be for the MLB to have a franchise move from the third biggest market to Nashville?
A place you've been for well over a century now.
Yeah, the NFL or the MLB is not going to let that happen.
No.
It's not going to happen. The profits aren't there either. It doesn't make financial sense for him either. It's is the sad thing is Jerry Reinsdorf. This is all a business. This is all a business. It is all about profit. He doesn't care a thing about wins and losses. It's all about making money. And that's really sad. And honestly, Chris Getz was put in there not because he was the best, because number one, Chris Getz does not get paid a lot. And number two is Chris Getz is a guy that's just going to do the bidding of Jerry, which is keep the payroll low and keep the profits high.
Yep.
I mean, that's the facts. Is we all talked uh about Tim Anderson, that picking up his final year option made a ton of sense because it wasn't that expensive. And if he rebounds, you could flip him and get something for him. But the White Sox went, nah, we're not going to, because they didn't want to pay that money. They signed a guy to a 2-year, $15 million deal, but they deferred a lot of the money with the assumption that they're going to trade it. They're trading Dylan Cease because they don't want to have to pay his upcoming contract that's going to be due. And what's even worse about that is, have you ever noticed, is every time there's a player that's due money, the media campaign against them, how they're not worth it, starts popping up. And
Hmm.
that's all a Reinsdorf. I mean, it went back to Frank Thomas and Albert Bell, and it's gone back a long way. Is even think about uh um what's his name? Chris Sale. Is Chris Sale, you were like, oh, that guy's a locker room problem. He cut up his jersey. Do you think if he was willing to sign for $5 million a year as an extension, that cutting up that jersey would have meant anything? No, it's because he was going to be due a big contract, and they wanted to soften the blow when they shipped him out. And they got a lot for him, but it was prospects, but which saved the team money. That's Jerry's MO, is save money, and that's what he wants to do. He wants him and his partners to make more money, which is just really sad. Is he's almost a 90-year-old billionaire. Don't you at some point go, you know what? I've got enough money. I want to win.
Well, you would hope, you would think.
Uh, it's the White Sox have a sad existence, and I feel really bad for their fans. It's that's it's just a really shitty situation that they're in. And Jerry Reinsdorf is, he's a powerful man in the MLB, but he is really hated in this town. Rightfully
Yes,
so.
he is. Yes, he
Rightfully so.
is.
He he might be worse than Old Man Wirtz.
That's a debate that could go on.
At least it's not a clear runaway winner. I mean, Old Man Wirtz was bad, took him off TV, but he owned one team. This guy owns two teams that are two bigger sports in an era that's, where things there should be money spent. I mean, how many teams in Major League Baseball have never given $100 million contract?
Only a few.
I believe it's 3 right now.
The Sox, Oakland,
And Kansas City.
Kansas City. Yeah.
And Kansas City is about to have to pay Bichette.
He's on
Or is that
he's on the Blue Jays.
Blue Jays? Okay, sorry. Um, but it's on. Who's the two? Let me pull up the actual list. But it's definitely the Oakland. And Oakland is going to
They're going to
have to,
Vegas.
they're going to Vegas. They're going to have to sign somebody to make a big splash when they go. So
Mhm.
I expect them to make a big splash soon. Let's see. All right. Biggest contract by team. Um, Orioles have 100. The Rays have 100. Red Sox have 100. Yankees. Guardians. Okay, the Royals have not. So there's the Royals. So you've got 3 teams. So I mean, the White Sox are in a huge market, and they've never given $100 million contract. And the player,
Isn't their biggest contract Andrew Benintendi?
yes,
A guy with no power.
It was Bobby Witt. Bobby Witt's going to be due money.
Bobby Witt. Okay, yeah, not Bo Bichette.
Yeah, sorry. Different kid of a former player when I was a kid.
Exactly.
Witt's going to be due a contract, and so they're probably going to give it. So the White Sox are going to be the last team that hasn't given $100 million contract.
Certainly not going to give one this year. That's for sure.
No, they're not. And the guy that's closest to getting one, Dylan Cease, is everybody's. The media has already started on he should be traded train, which is, it's pushed by Jerry Reinsdorf, because you want to soften that blow with the fans. If you make the media talk about how good it would be to trade him and the right thing to do, it softens the blow with the fans. So when you do it, they are less mad. So I mean, it's the wrong thing for the fans. It's the wrong things for the team. The only person that's right for would be Jerry Reinsdorf's bottom dollar and Dylan Cease himself. Because you know what? Is let him go to somewhere where he's going to be able to win baseball games. It's going to be a hell of a lot easier to pitch knowing that you have Freddie Freeman, Shohei Ohtani, and Mookie Betts, batting behind you.
Yeah, no kidding.
So, yeah, it just sucks. The White Sox, sure, their minor league farm system has improved. They're just not really.
It's not stellar yet. I mean, it could become stellar if you trade a few guys like Dylan Cease, but as of right now, it's what, maybe middle of the pack at most.
So we talked about what their pool of players for their starting rotation would be. This is what their starting lineup would look like right now. Andrew Benintendi in left, Yoan Moncada at third, Luis Robert at center, Eloy at DH, Andrew Vaughn at first, Oscar Colas or Gavin Sheets in right, Paul DeYoung at shortstop, Max Stassi catching, and Nicky Lopez at second base. Like the first few guys, you're like, okay, but man, the 6, 7, 8, and 9 spots in your order, oof, that's a lot of easy outs there.
Yeah, I mean, you did get better defensively in some spots, but worse offensively. So it's like a trade for one for the other.
Yeah, this team is going to be dreadful next year, and the White Sox fans don't deserve that.
Yeah, it's going to be rough.
We've been talking long. Do you want to quickly talk Blackhawks, or should we save that for next week?
Let's save that for next week. I mean, I'll say this quickly. I got 2 quick points I want to make. We'll talk more in depth about it at another time. But, the Blackhawks, tough loss tonight against the Capitals. But hey, you won 2 in a row for the first time this past week. You beat the Blues at home, which is really, really nice. That was a really fun game to watch. You're seeing some good things from Peter Mrazek. He's been playing great. Arvid Soderblom, he's struggling. You lost in the shootout against the Nashville Predators, where he just got absolutely baked. But Connor Bedard had that amazing shootout goal. But, you're just kind of going along. And quick Bulls note, They keep winning without Zach LaVine. And we can talk more about that when the time comes, but I think it's going to be a big test when they've got some good opponents coming up. Beating the Bucks was awesome. That was fun. They had great energy and everything. You've beaten some bad teams, and you're going to play some better teams going forward, so that's going to be your test.
Yeah, the only things I want to say quick is agree with you about the Bulls point. We'll talk more next week. Nick Foligno has been with the whole Corey Perry situation and the Taylor Hall injury. Nick Foligno has been a really important free agent, and I thought he was going to be a guy that you'd look to flip. I don't think you can. I don't think you can at all. And in fact, you should probably think about re-signing him. And Dickinson has been fantastic compared to his career numbers and what he's been this year, has been a bright star.
Yeah.
And Lucas Reichel needs to figure a few things out.
I agree. But like I said, we'll get more into that on another day.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please hit subscribe however you listen, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, Spotify, etc. Share this podcast with your friends. That's how we grow the show. Follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com. Or ShyFanPat2 for Alex on Twitter, or AlexanderJPatCreative.com for all the cool stuff that Alex does. And again, thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7. The Bears.
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down